Okay, let's dive into this. On the surface, the source material we're looking at today might just seem like a wild, super fast-paced animated story about two penguins, Goo Gaga and Lily, getting into all sorts of ridiculous trouble. I mean, we're literally talking about penguins trying to survive human high school here. But if we peel back the layers of these totally absurd hide-and-seek games and the chaotic human environments they just stumble through, we actually uncover a deeply profound tale. So, today's explainer is going to decode all this unexpected emotional depth. We're going to look really closely at their journey, which is honestly this beautiful exploration of displacement, the loss of identity, and what it actually means to find your way home.
To make sense of this whole narrative, we've structured our analysis into four distinct stages. First up, stranded in the Arctic. Second, surviving human society. Third, the fading colors. And finally, the search for home. Section 1. Stranded in the Arctic, the inciting incident.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how terrifyingly fast the situation escalates. Minutes in, they've suddenly arrived in the Arctic. Just hours in, the ice floe breaks. And within days, it turns into sheer panic and separation. This rapid pacing perfectly mirrors their sudden desperate reality. One minute, they're playfully dealing with a frying pan, and the next, it hits them. The ice floe isn't going to hold. As the ice physically splinters beneath them, so does their entire sense of security. They're suddenly thrust into this desperate survival situation, basically scrambling for any way across the freezing water.
To really ground that frantic pacing, we have to look at this emotional tentpole moment. Right after the ice breaks, Goo Gaga utters these absolutely heartbreaking words. "Is this really the end? This is all my fault." That right there, that tells us this isn't just an action sequence, it's a deeply psychological one. It establishes this incredibly heavy burden of immediate guilt and just absolute vulnerability. Goo Gaga feels entirely responsible for their displacement, which really sets up the emotional stakes for everything else that follows. Moving on to Section 2, Surviving Human Society, the Culture Clash. So, the source material sets up this intense culture clash, literally dropping these innocent penguins right into a human school and a prom. In their world, offering up raw fish is practically a five-star seafood buffet, right? But the human reaction? They're told it smells crazy, and suddenly they're expected to do push-ups and cram their flippers into sneakers. It's an absurd but honestly harsh reality check. Trying to fit in requires them to abandon their natural instincts entirely. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the source material uses language to highlight their alienation. When the penguins offer fish, they're genuinely trying to connect, but the humans respond using slang, calling the whole situation cooked. Taking it completely literally, the penguins ask, "Who cooked the fish?" only to be bluntly told that here, cooked means bad. It's this tragicomic example of cross-cultural miscommunication that just leaves them feeling entirely out of place. This intense pressure to assimilate really comes to a head during the disastrous human prom sequence. They're judged so relentlessly by the humans, who just label them as cringe. After an attempt to impress goes completely sideways, we hear this agonizing realization. "Look at the mess you've made. I ruined everything." The external pressure of simply trying to look human enough forces our characters into a tight corner of internal heartbreak. Their attempt to conform just results in feelings of total undeniable failure. Section 3. The fading colors, a crisis of identity. Let's move to and see how this builds into a surreal, metaphorical sequence. In this strange new environment, a crisis unfolds where only one specific color is deemed beautiful. And it gets worse. Touching objects actively drains their natural color away, and the entire city's color reserves are depleting. This literal fading of colors in the source text represents the dangerous loss of individuality that happens when you just try way too hard to assimilate. They're being drained of exactly what makes them unique. Yet, even within this crisis, there's this tiny spark of hope, the realization that while they can't restore our own colors, we can create new ones. This whole theme of conforming to a harsh system is further echoed in a pretty cruel evaluation sequence. The system dictates that the older sister should be chosen because her, quote, performance rate is much higher, basically a cold, hard calculation of worth. Yet, totally defying this rigid system, the ultimate choice ends up being an emotional one. The coveted star is given to Lily instead, simply because it suits you better. It's a quiet rebellion against a world that only values metrics and numbers. But, that systemic pressure leaves deep scars. We hear this heartbreaking question, if I become better, then I'll be the one chosen, right? This exposes the truly tragic mindset that forced assimilation pushes on them.
They've essentially been conditioned to believe that love, acceptance, and their very right to exist are solely tied to their performance rate, with the haunting warning ringing in their ears that they can no longer touch their own colors. They're left at a critical crossroads. Think about it. They've lost their home, their identity is fading away, and they are completely exhausted from performing. The overarching question hanging over the narrative is, can they restore their colors, or are they lost forever? This existential crisis beautifully sets up our final resolution. Which brings us to Section 4, the search for home, finding each other.
So the crucial point is that when morning arrives, it brings a devastating realization. Goo Gaga has disappeared. This initiates a frantic search across the cold old center. This massive physical search, looking absolutely everywhere, hiding in the cold, calling out for each other. It directly mirrors their deep emotional need to simply find one another again amidst all the chaos and noise. Now, the source material leans heavily into sudden sci-fi elements here to really escalate the tension. This isn't just looking around a house. It's an extreme, almost militaristic game of hide-and-seek. They're utilizing enhanced search protocols. They're deploying search drones over the ice fields, expanding the search area, and activating a chilling observation mode. The cold, calculating technology contrasts so sharply with the warm, desperate emotional need to find their lost family member. And then the countdown begins, 30 seconds. With only 30 seconds left on the clock, the stakes of this game absolutely skyrocket. This is no longer just playing around. There's a looming threat of a severe punishment mode if they fail. The immense pressure of that ticking clock forces a moment of absolute crystal clarity. When the game finally ends and the punishment mode is initiated, we reach the true emotional climax of the story. One of the characters confesses, "I'm sorry, I was wrong to care too much about winning." This is a massive breakthrough. They finally realize that competing, performing, and trying to win the approval of this strange, demanding new society is completely meaningless compared to the bond they share with each other. Which brings us to the core takeaway from this surprisingly poignant source material. Despite the breaking ice floes, the judgmental humans, the draining color machines, and those menacing search drones, their true safe haven was never a physical location. Home wasn't a spot in the Arctic, and it certainly wasn't the human city. Home was, and always had been, each other. It's a really powerful realization wrapped in a chaotic package, isn't it? It leaves us with something quite profound to consider in our own lives. When we strip away our own fading colors, the roles we play to fit in, and the frantic chaos around us, is home simply the people who never stop searching for us? It's definitely a question worth keeping with you long after this explainer ends. Thank you so much for joining me to decode this incredible journey, and I really encourage you to keep looking past the surface of the stories you encounter.